I never thought I'd be the guy who would find himself in a situation like this. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. My name is Dave, and I've been married to Sarah for 6 years. On the surface, we had a good life together. We lived in a decent neighborhood, had good jobs, and enjoyed the occasional night out with friends. But underneath it all, something was off. In the previous months, I started noticing little things that raised my suspicions. Sarah, who once used to plan our weekends with enthusiasm, suddenly seemed disinterested. She started spending longer hours at the gym, claiming she wanted to get in shape for a big anniversary party. Her phone usage also changed. She became hyperprotective over it, always scrolling through messages with a frown on her face, sometimes sneaking off to the bathroom to take calls. Little did I know that those calls were not about workout plans or deals at work. One night while she was getting ready to go out with friends, I felt an inexplicable urge to check her phone. I know it's a breach of trust, but I was desperate for answers. I went against my better judgment and my heart raced as I unlocked it. I didn't find anything incriminating at first, just endless selfies and boring group chats. But then I stumbled upon a text that made my blood run cold. It was a message from a guy named Jason, a nightclub bouncer, with a suggestion to meet up after her girls' night out. The text was flirty and suggestive, leaving no room for doubt about what was happening. In that moment, my heart sank and my stomach twisted into knots. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, and here I was, blindsided by the realization that my wife was cheating on me. I managed to keep my composure that night, but inside I was a raging storm. The next day I confronted Sarah. The moment I walked through the door, I could tell something was different. She looked nervous, avoiding eye contact and fidgeting with her hair. I had rehearsed my words 100 times in my mind, but when I finally confronted her, it felt like I had been blindsided again. I told her I knew about Jason and the texts. Instead of denying it, she went into full-on damage control mode. "Oh, come on, Dave, it's just harmless flirting. You know how guys are. It didn't mean anything. You're being ridiculous," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of annoyance and feigned innocence. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I held it back, trying to process her lack of remorse. "Harmless flirting," I shot back. "You've been texting him for months. Do you think I'm stupid?" The more we argued, the more she deflected, trying to twist the narrative that I was the one who was overreacting. It was infuriating to listen to her excuses as she painted herself as the victim. It took every ounce of my self-control not to explode. I finally told her that I needed time to think and that I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies and deceit. The emotional impact of that moment hit me like a freight train. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and deeply hurt. This was the woman I had trusted with my heart, and now she had shattered it into pieces. I spent that night pacing in our living room, consumed by anger and disbelief. I just needed a plan. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I would show her what betrayal really costs. It was time for me to take control back. I started plotting my revenge, thinking about how to make her feel the weight of her actions. I wasn't just going to be a passive victim. I was going to be a force to be reckoned with. If she thought she could have her fun and still keep me in her life as a backup, she had another thing coming. I would become the VIP. It was time for her to experience the consequences of her choices. Whatever I had to do, I was prepared to take the risk. The stage was set for a dramatic turn of events, and I was ready to play my part. And thus, my journey of revenge began. The night was still young, and I was fueled by a mix of anger and determination. I was ready to assert my dominance over the social circles we shared, and I would make sure she felt the impact of her betrayal. As I laid in bed that night, staring ceiling, I realized that this was only the beginning of my descent into a calculated revenge that would change everything. The next few days passed in a haze of anger and determination. I kept replaying the confrontation with Sarah in my mind, feeling the heat of betrayal fueling my resolve. I needed a plan, and I needed it to be effective. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, and I wasn't going to let my emotions cloud my judgment. I would take my time and make sure every step I took was deliberate. I started by researching Jason. I found out where he worked, the nightclub he bounced at. It was a popular spot, known for its exclusivity and vibrant nightlife. I realized I could use this to my advantage. I had never been the type to frequent nightclubs, but now I had a reason to step into that world. I wanted to become a VIP, someone who commanded respect and attention, someone Sarah couldn't simply brush off as just her husband. I enlisted the help of my friend Mark, who had connections in the nightlife scene. He was a regular at the club and knew the owner. Personally, we met up for drinks and I laid out my plan. Mark was surprised at first but quickly came around to the idea when I explained my motivations. "You want to show her what she's missing out on, huh?" he said with a smirk. "I can help with that." Together, we made arrangements for me to become a VIP at the club, getting on the guest list and securing a table for the weekend. As the week dragged on, every interaction with Sarah felt like a performance. She was blissfully unaware of my plans, showering me with affection and trying to make amends. She kept bringing up our anniversary and suggesting we plan a romantic getaway. It was infuriating to see her completely disregard the gravity of her actions. Each time she smiled at me, I felt a mix of rage and pity. How could she think everything was fine when I was painfully aware of the lies that lingered between us? Friday night finally arrived, and I was ready to execute my plan. I dressed sharp, a tailored suit that made me look every bit the part of a VIP. I had to present myself as someone who had moved on, someone who was thriving despite her betrayal. Mark picked me up, and as we drove to the club, I felt a rush of excitement and nerves. It was like stepping into another world, a battleground where I would reclaim my pride. When we arrived at the club, the line of hopeful patrons stretched around the block. I strode past them, a wave of confidence washing over me as I approached the front. The bouncer nodded in recognition and stepped aside, allowing me entry. The bass thumped through the walls and the atmosphere was charged with energy. As we walked into the main area, I glanced around, soaking in the vibrant lights and the mix of laughter and music. This was the scene I would now dominate. I took a seat at our reserved table, ordered a bottle of expensive champagne, and waited for the night to unfold. Mark and I were soon joined by a few of his friends, and I quickly began to mingle. I made sure to interact with everyone, exuding confidence and charm. I wanted to be the man everyone talked about, the one in control. A few hours in, the place was packed, and I felt the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was dancing, laughing, and enjoying the attention. Each moment felt like a little victory against the backdrop of the betrayal that had rocked my world. As I immersed myself in the nightlife, I kept an eye on the entrance, waiting for her. And then, just as the clock struck midnight, there she was. Sarah walked in with her girlfriends, looking radiant and carefree, completely unaware of my presence. My heart raced at the sight of her. She was dressed to impress, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of nostalgia. Remembering the girl I fell in love with, the woman I had thought would never betray me. But that thought quickly vanished, replaced by the thrill of my plan. I noticed her scanning the room, laughing with her friends, oblivious to where I sat, surrounded by excitement and new faces. I wanted her to see me, to notice how I had transformed into someone she wouldn't easily dismiss. It was time for the show to begin. I raised my glass to Mark, signaling him to get ready. In a few moments I would reveal my presence. I wanted Sarah to see me at my best, thriving without her. Just as I was about to stand up, I caught sight of Jason entering the club. My heart sank momentarily, but then I remembered my purpose. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I stood up, adjusted my suit, and made my way toward the dance floor where the music pulsed like a heartbeat. As I approached, I could see Sarah's expression shift from joy to confusion as she finally laid eyes on me. I flashed a confident smile, reveling in the moment. I was no longer just her husband. I was a man who commanded respect, and I intended to show her just how far I would go to reclaim my dignity. The night was still young, and the real games were just beginning. I didn't know how this would all unfold, but I did know one thing. Sarah was about to learn that decisions have consequences, and those consequences could be life-altering. The stage was set, and I was ready to play the leading role in my own story of revenge. The moment I stepped onto the dance floor, the atmosphere shifted. It felt like the room Paused for a brief second as Sarah's gaze locked onto mine. I could see the confusion morph into disbelief, that look on her face priceless. I walked toward her, feeling a surge of adrenaline. I was no longer the man she had betrayed. I was transformed into someone she needed to notice, someone who had moved on. "Dave, what are you doing here?" Her voice was laced with surprise, and I could see her trying to mask it with a smile. "Just enjoying the night, Sarah," I replied, keeping my tone light and casual as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Looks like you're having fun too." I gestured toward her friends who were giggling and whispering among themselves. She hesitated for a moment, clearly flustered. "I didn't know you'd be here. I thought you were working late." "Changed my plans," I said, allowing a smirk to creep onto my face. I figured it was time for me to let loose a little. My eyes darted over to Jason, who was now leaning against the bar, watching us with an amused expression. I felt a surge of satisfaction. The bouncer was clearly taken aback by my presence as well. "Wow, you clean up nice," Sarah said, attempting to regain her composure. "I didn't think you'd ever want to come to a place like this." "Things change," I replied coolly. "I guess you never really know someone until you catch them in a lie." That comment hung in the air, heavy with implication, and I could see the color drain from her face. "Dave, can we talk?" she asked, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Sure, but not here," I replied, glancing around at the sea of people. I wasn't about to give her a moment to spin her narrative. "How about I grab another drink first and we can chat?" I turned away before she could respond, relishing the rush of power I felt as I walked back to my table. Mark and the others were watching with wide eyes, clearly enjoying the unfolding drama. "Dude, you're killing it," Mark said, giving me a fist bump. "She has no idea what she's in for." I ordered another drink, savoring the moment as I glanced back at Sarah. She was huddled, with her friends whispering animatedly, likely trying to make sense of my sudden transformation. I chuckled to myself. This was only the beginning. After a few minutes, Sarah approached me again, this time with a sense of urgency. "Can we talk now?" she insisted, her voice slightly more demanding. "Fine," I replied, feigning indifference. I led her outside to a quieter area of the club, away from the pounding music and the crowd. "What's on your mind?" "I didn't expect to see you here," she started, her tone a mix of surprise and guilt. "I thought you were still at home." "Obviously I'm not," I said, cutting her off. "You seem to have a habit of making assumptions, don't you? Like assuming I wouldn't find out about you and Jason." "Dave, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her eyes widening as she tried to weave her web of lies again. "We were just having fun. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. You know how things can be when you're out with the girls." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "You mean you're fun with a guy who bounces people out of this place?" "How could you think I'd believe that? I saw the text, Sarah. You don't just text a guy like that for fun." She looked defensive, her cheeks reddening. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I never meant to hurt you. It was just a stupid mistake." "A mistake?" I couldn't help but laugh, the bitterness in my voice evident. "You call it a mistake, but it's a choice, Sarah. You chose to betray me. You chose to share yourself with someone else." Her expression shifted from guilt to outrage. "You're acting like you're perfect. You never make mistakes. You just sit there and judge me." I took a step closer, leaning in to make sure she felt the weight of my words. "No, I'm not perfect, but I've never betrayed the person I love. I'm not the one who took a vow and then decided to throw it away for a thrill." Tears started to well up in her eyes, but I wasn't going to give in. I wanted her to feel this pain, to understand the gravity of what she had done. "You keep thinking you can just brush this off, but I'm done being the fool in this relationship." "Dave, please," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "I can change. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." "Fix this?" I echoed, shaking my head. "You think you can just erase what you did? I can't just forget that you chose to be with him." I took a moment, the emotions swirling within me. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." As I spoke, I felt a flood of sadness washing over me. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with, was standing there, desperately trying to salvage something that was already broken. But the anger within me overshadowed the sadness. I had to stay strong. "Tonight I'm here to reclaim my life," I said firmly. "I'm not just your husband anymore. I'm a man who deserves respect, and I'm not going to let you pretend everything is fine. You will feel the consequences of your actions." With that, I turned and walked back into the club, leaving her standing there, speechless and distraught. I felt a mix of triumph and emptiness. This was my chance to take control of my life again, but it also left a lingering ache in my heart. I knew I had to stay focused. There was no room for weakness now. As I rejoined my friends, I realized that I needed to keep my momentum going. I was committed to this path of revenge, to asserting my dominance, and to showing Sarah that I was no longer the man she could take for granted. I would make her see how it felt to lose someone who truly cared about her. The consequences of her choices were only just beginning. The night was far from over, and I was ready to embrace the chaos that lay ahead. The night continued to unfold like a whirlwind, and I was riding the wave of adrenaline and bitterness. As I rejoined Mark and the others at the table, I could see the curiosity burning in their eyes. They wanted to know what had just happened, and I couldn't help but smirk at their eagerness. "Dude, that was intense," Mark exclaimed. "What did she say?" I took a long sip of my drink, savoring the taste before launching into a recount of the confrontation. "She tried to downplay everything, of course, said it was just harmless fun," I replied, rolling my eyes. "But seriously, who does she think she's fooling?" My friends nodded in agreement, and I could see their approval reflected in their expressions. It felt good to have their support, to know that I wasn't alone in this battle. I continued to regale them with details, embellishing here and there for dramatic effect. The thrill of being in the center of attention felt intoxicating, and I began to realize how empowering it was to step away from being the victim. As the hours passed, I noticed Sarah lingering around the club, her friends trying to pull her into the fun, but she seemed distant. It was as if she was searching for me, trying to gauge my mood, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I shifted my focus to the people around me, engaging with new faces and laughing like I hadn't in a long time. I was determined to show Sarah that I was moving on, that I could thrive without her. Eventually, I spotted Jason at the bar, his confident demeanor drawing attention from several women nearby. I could feel my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wanted to keep this under control. My revenge needed to be calculated, not reckless. With a deep breath, I approached him, making sure I had an air of nonchalance about me. "Hey man, how's it going?" I said, extending my hand. He looked surprised for a moment, clearly unsure why I was approaching him. Hey," he replied, shaking my hand awkwardly. "You're Dave, right? Sarah's husband." "Yeah, that's me," I said, forcing a friendly smile. "Just thought I'd introduce myself since we seem to have a mutual connection these days." The words dripped with sarcasm, but I kept my tone light. Jason raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement flickering across his face. "Yeah, I guess you could say that. She's quite the lady." "Yeah, well, I guess we all have our weaknesses," I said, my voice steady. "Just wanted to let you know that I'm back in the picture, so you might want to watch your back." There it was, the subtle threat that hinted at the changing dynamics. I didn't want to escalate anything too quickly, but I needed him to understand that I wasn't going to be a passive spectator in this situation. The look on his face spoke volumes. He was suddenly more cautious, and I could tell he hadn't expected me to confront him like this. "Understood," Jason replied, his voice lowering slightly. "No hard feelings, man, just having a good time." "Sure, just know that I'm not going to let this slide easily," I added, turning away as I walked back to my table, feeling a mix of satisfaction and anxiety. I was treading dangerous waters, but there was no turning back now. I had to maintain my position to show that I wouldn't be pushed aside. As I returned to my friends, I noticed Sarah watching from a distance. She looked hurt, her expression a mixture of regret and anger, but I didn't care. I was done letting her manipulate my emotions. I was the one holding the cards now, and I intended to play them wisely. The night wore on, the music blaring and the drinks flowing. I danced, laughed, and engaged with everyone around me, fully embracing my role as a VIP. Every time I glanced over at Sarah, I could see her frustration building. She tried to make her way back to me a few more times, but each time I just brushed her off. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into feeling sorry for her. Around 2 a.m., the atmosphere shifted, and the crowd began to thin out. It was a defining moment. I could feel the energy of the night winding down, but I wasn't ready to leave just yet. I wanted to make one final statement before the night came to a close. I turned to Mark and his friends. "Let's hit the dance floor one more time. I want to end this night on a high note." They cheered in agreement, and we made our way back to the dance floor where the beats pulsed and the lights flashed with intensity. I danced with reckless abandon, losing myself in the moment. And as I glanced back toward Sarah, I saw her standing there, the hurt and realization etched across her face. In that moment, I felt powerful. I was the man in control of my own narrative, no longer defined by her betrayal. I moved closer to the center of the floor where the energy was electric. Mark and the others joined me, and we danced like we were on top of the world. It was exhilarating, and I could feel the eyes of the crowd on us. Then, in a bold move, I pulled a random woman from the crowd into my dance circle. She laughed, clearly enjoying the attention, and as we spun and twirled, I could feel Sarah's eyes burning into me. I wanted her to see what she was missing. I wanted her to know that I was not just some fool who would wait around for her to come back. She had made her choice, and now I was making mine. I would thrive, I would enjoy life, and I would show her that I didn't need her to be happy. As the night drew to a close, I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. I was ready to face whatever consequences awaited me, but I knew one thing for sure: I would never let myself be a victim again. I had taken my power back, and I was ready for whatever came next. The reality of my situation still loomed, but for that night, I was a man unbound by betrayal and regret. I was a man ready to reclaim his life, and I wasn't going to hold back anymore. The stage was set for the final act, and I was ready to take my bow. As the night came to an end, I felt a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. The adrenaline that had powered me through the evening began to fade, replaced by the calm realization of what I'd just accomplished. I had played my part to perfection, asserting my dominance in a way that Sarah had never expected. But as I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, and I was reminded that the real work was just beginning. The club was buzzing as people poured out into the streets, some laughing and shouting as they made their way home. I spotted Sarah standing by the entrance, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, waiting for me. The vulnerability in her posture was striking. It was a stark contrast to the confident man I had just portrayed inside. I approached her slowly, my heart still racing from the events of the night. "You wanted to talk," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Dave, can we please just have a normal conversation for once?" she implored, her voice tinged with frustration. "You're making this so much harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think this is hard for you? Try being on the receiving end of what you did to me. I'm just finally standing up for myself." Her expression shifted, a mix of anger and remorse. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was stupid. I was lonely. We weren't connecting anymore, and he was there. It was a mistake." "So was marrying me, I suppose." I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. "You made a choice, Sarah. You didn't just slip and fall into his arms. You chose to keep your relationship with him alive. And now you want me to forget it all because you're feeling guilty." "It's not just that," she insisted, her voice rising. "I want to fix this. I miss you, Dave. I want us to work." Again, I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. "You don't get to come back and pretend like everything is fine because you're feeling bad about your choices. I can't just flip a switch and act like I'm okay with lying, with betrayal. Do you understand that?" Sarah looked away, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know I messed up, but I need you to understand that it didn't mean anything to me. I was just trying to escape from our own issues." "Escape?" I said incredulously. "You didn't escape, you ran straight into someone else's arms. We all have problems, Sarah, but that doesn't mean you go around seeking comfort in someone else. That's not how relationships work." She opened her mouth to argue again, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No, I won't do this anymore. I'm not going to let you manipulate me into feeling guilty for feeling hurt. I'm done being the victim. You need to understand that." The silence hung between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I could see the reality of her actions crashing down on her, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by my own pain and anger. "Tonight I took back my power," I said firmly. "I'm not the man you can just walk all over. I deserve more than that. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. I know I can give you that, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Just give me a chance to prove it. I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. You've had your chances, Sarah. I can't keep living in this cycle of trust and betrayal. I've made my decision. Her eyes widened, realization dawning on her. What are you saying? I'm saying that we need to take a step back, I replied, my voice steady. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. This marriage is broken and I don't know if we can fix it. The tears finally fell, and I felt a mix of sadness and empowerment. I wasn't happy to see her hurt, but I knew it was a necessary step for both of us. I wasn't ready to make any drastic decisions yet, but I needed space. I needed time to reflect on what I truly wanted. Maybe some time apart will help us both see things clearly, I continued. I'm not saying it's over for good, but we can't keep living like this. I need to focus on myself for a while. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding creeping into her expression. I can respect that, I don't want to lose you. Then maybe you should have thought about that before running into someone else's arms, I reminded her, my voice softening slightly. She sighed, the weight of her choices palpable. I know, I really messed up, but I want to fix it. I'll do anything. Then work on yourself, I said, my tone firm but compassionate. Take this time to figure out what you really want. Because right now I can't trust you and I can't keep putting myself in a position to get hurt again. As I walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. I had stood my ground, asserting my worth and showing Sarah that I wouldn't accept anything less than respect. It was a painful decision, but it was also empowering. In the days that followed, I focused on myself. I spent time with friends, reconnected with hobbies I had neglected, and started to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. I learned that betrayal can be a catalyst for change, forcing us to confront our deepest fears and desires. In reclaiming my power, I began to understand what I truly wanted in a relationship. And while the journey ahead was uncertain, I knew I was on the right path. The stage was set for the final act, but this time I would be the one writing the script. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that I was worthy of love, respect, and happiness. The next chapter of my life awaited, and I was determined to make it a good one. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself in a strange new rhythm. The initial shock of Sarah's betrayal had faded into a more manageable pain, one that I was learning to live with. I focused on building a life for myself outside our marriage. I started going to the gym more frequently, not just to stay fit but also to clear my mind. Each workout became a cathartic release, a way to channel my frustrations and rebuild my self-esteem. I also reconnected with friends I had drifted away from during our marriage. Mark was a constant support, encouraging me to go out, try new things, and just enjoy life again. He introduced me to new social circles, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of freedom. I was not just Dave, Sarah's husband. I was Dave, a man rediscovering his passions and interests. But as the weeks passed, Sarah reached out several times trying to initiate conversations. I was cordial, but I kept my distance. I needed to maintain my boundaries. Each time we spoke, I could feel her sincerity. She genuinely wanted to work on herself and win back my trust. However, I was still cautious. Trust, once broken, is hard to mend. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with a drink in hand, I received a text from her. "Can we meet? I want to talk." My heart raced as I considered it. I hadn't seen her in person since our heated conversation outside the club. I took a deep breath and replied, "Sure, but let's keep it casual." We agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. The day arrived, and as I walked into the cafe, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I spotted her sitting at a corner table, looking nervous as she fidgeted with her hands. She had changed her hairstyle, and her outfit was more casual than I remembered. The sight of her stirred up a wave of emotions, but I quickly reminded myself to stay grounded. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice soft. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," I said, trying to keep things light. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realized how much I took for granted in our marriage. I made terrible mistakes and I understand if you can't forgive me. I nodded, wanting to hear her out but remaining guarded. I'm glad you're reflecting on this. It's important to recognize what went wrong. I've started therapy, she continued, her voice steadying. I realized that I didn't just cheat on you, I cheated myself out of the kind of love we had. I've been working on understanding why I made those choices and how I can be better not just for you but for myself too. Her words struck a chord and I felt a flicker of hope mixed with doubt. That's good, I said cautiously. But it takes more than just acknowledging the past. Trust is built over time, and right now I can't say I trust you. I know, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but I want to earn that trust back. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you that I've changed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in weeks I felt a twinge of empathy. I appreciate that, Sarah, I really do, but I need time. I'm not ready to jump back into anything. I completely understand, she replied, her voice cracking slightly. I just want you to know that I'm here ready to support you and open to whatever you decide. We spent some time talking, reminiscing about the good moments we shared, and it felt strangely comforting. But I remained aware of the truth. Our relationship had changed irreparably. I wouldn't ignore that. As our meeting came to an end, I felt a renewed sense of closure. I wasn't ready to reconcile, but I was willing to explore the possibility of friendship, even if it was tentative. We parted ways with a sense of understanding, a glimmer of hope for the future, but also the realization that healing would take time. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on myself. I embraced my newfound freedom and strength. I started dating casually, not to replace Sarah, but to remind myself that I could connect with others. Each interaction helped me regain confidence in my ability to love and be loved. Eventually, I reached a point where I could face Sarah without resentment. We began to communicate more openly, sharing our thoughts and feelings about what had happened. I could sense her sincerity, and while I still wasn't ready to rekindle our relationship, I appreciated the steps she was taking to better herself. Over time, I learned that revenge wasn't about malicious acts or causing pain. It was about reclaiming my identity and finding strength in the face of betrayal. I had faced the darkness and emerged on the other side, not unscathed but certainly wiser. Months later, I found myself at a crossroads. I could choose to either continue on my path of self-discovery or consider giving Sarah another chance. I wasn't there yet, but I could see the potential for healing, not just for her but for me as well. I realized that life is too short to hold on to bitterness. It was a journey, one filled with ups and downs, but I had learned what it meant to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. The betrayal had changed me, but it also pushed me toward growth and self-awareness. In the end, I knew I would be okay, no matter what the future held. I was Dave, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged resilient, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for him. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.